On air, online, on point.
Slave times when they were
Confidence of the American people.
The state of
Quite the
Washington
habit.
district attorney wanted to get rid of it.
Hello and welcome to On Point. I'm Dianne Escalona. Take a look behind the news stories breaking all over the world this week and you may find a common theme: the role of social media. There were protesters in Russia demonstrating against Vladimir Putin's re-election who were organized through Facebook and Twitter. The rebels in Syria say they are using Skype and social media to try to get their story out to the world. Former Israeli Prime Minister Shimon Peres went to Facebook headquarters this week to get help setting up a Facebook page in order to reach young Arabs and help them understand the Israeli point of view. It seems that a generation of activists are being inspired and organized through social media sites like Twitter and Facebook. Many members of the CSUN community say they are using social media to follow political news.
Yeah, definitely. I use Twitter more for that.
Use Twitter more. Okay.
Yeah, because like on Facebook they control your news feed, or it's like, especially now that they've changed it, you see a lot of like only certain friends. You don't really see everything that's posted and stuff. So with Twitter, I find I can just follow whoever, CNN or NBC or whatever news sources I want, and then I'll always see all their tweets.
Okay.
So if something's going on, I usually can see about it. And then
Now I was talking to my friends, and now it's just if I need to get a hold of somebody, I'll just do it
the
through
old
Facebook.
school way. Pick up a phone.
Well, yeah, either the phone or if I don't have their number, I can look them up easier and get a hold of them.
Yes, I do. But if there's something that really strikes me and I really want to know more about it, I'll actually do my own research and find out if it's true or not, just to see what's really going on, because I don't really want to go off of somebody who might not be as credible as, like CNN or something like that.
Sometimes if people will send me articles that I think are interesting, or video lectures that I think are interesting, I will kind of click on them and read them and listen to them, but I don't know if I kind of sign up to follow them around.
The CSUN students we interviewed say Twitter hasn't prompted them to join any political movements yet, but they say they are considering it.
Sometimes, not all of them. I know like the budget cuts, there was like the march going around the campus and stuff I saw on Facebook, so I participated for a while and then stopped, which I should have continued going, but that's about it.
Not really, actually. It's mostly just to keep up with friends and whatnot. Okay.
Maybe like just attended like community functions.
Okay.
Just through schooling and reading articles in newspapers and stuff.
Great.
I would say right now I'm more informed. Definitely being informed is a new thing for me. I've never really read newspapers or watched the news or been informed. I didn't really care.
Right.
So even being interested is sort of a new thing for me. So I'm not really at the point yet where like I would know how I'd want to take action or the best way for me to do, because I feel like everybody has their own interests and there's good ways for people to take action and there's ways that don't work for that type of person.
Right.
But there's a lot in the music community too, where there's activism for certain political movements. So I'm sure I'll get there, but right now even just knowing what's going on is sort of a new thing for me.
Right.
Yes, I believe it was like last semester, and it had to do with like a protest that was going on campus.
Okay.
And so me and my best friend actually came on campus and we participated in that.
That's wonderful. Have you ever taken political or social action by something you found out about through social media?
No.
No?
No. See, not worth the second half.
Okay, not worth the second half. Okay. All right.
Today, On Point reporter Angelika Sjostrom will be exploring the role social media are playing in politics and particularly in this year's presidential election. Angelika?
Thank you, Dianne. Joining me today is Mary Schaffer, Associate Professor in the Cinema and Television Arts Department here at CSUN, where she teaches all aspects of production and new media production and design. Thank you for joining us, Mary.
Thank you for inviting me.
Wonderful. In a July 2006 interview with Wired magazine, media mogul Rupert Murdoch was quoted as saying, "To find something comparable, you would have to go back 500 years to the printing press or the birth of mass media. Technology is shifting power away from the editors, the publishers, the establishment, and the media elite. Now it's the people who are taking control." Let's go back 50 years and talk about how television changed the face of elections.
Television dramatically changed the face of elections. And let's go back to 1952, because that was a real pivotal year. In 1952, people were just beginning to learn about computers. And at that point, we had mainframe computers, which were the size of this studio. And in 1952, CBS decided that on the night of the election, they would have the computer, which was the ENIAC computer, ENIAC, would predict the results of the election. And Dwight David Eisenhower was running, but everyone thought that the Democrat was going to win. And when Charles Collingwood was talking to the computer, and these clips are still exist, and you can actually look at them, and it's very funny because he goes, "Computer, can you tell me who has won the election?" And they get the results, and nobody at CBS believes it because they're predicting Dwight David Eisenhower, and he was never ahead in the polls. So what happened is Charles Collingwood said, "I think the computer is having a problem," and just went off script, totally off script, and said, we don't know yet who's won or anything, but at the end of the night, they discovered that the computer had actually the early exit polls had been put into the computer, and the ENIAC computer had predicted Dwight David Eisenhower, and he was the winner. But nobody believed that, and that was sort of the very, very beginning of new technology. And when you think about a computer, we don't think of computers being new technology,
Right.
entering into the world of television. The next thing that happened was in 1960. And 1960 is a pivotal year because that is the first televised presidential debates. And at that point, we had Richard Nixon running against John F. Kennedy. And the night of the debates, Richard Nixon came to the studio, and he had had the flu. He was running a temperature. He didn't look good. He had circles under his eyes. He had everyone called the 5 o'clock shadow. And John F. Kennedy came to the studio, and he had been sailing, and he had this great tan, and he looked fabulous. And the people offered Nixon the opportunity to put makeup on, and Nixon thought it wasn't real. He just he thought that he wouldn't look correct if he put makeup on. Right. So he said no. And what happened is the two of them, had their debate, and at the next day, everyone said that Kennedy had won because people looked at that, and Nixon looked really bad. I mean, he was sick, but he looked very bad. And Kennedy just looked strong with lots of vigor, and people were more swayed by the appearance versus the content.
Right.
There's been a number of studies, and people say that if you listen to a presidential debate on the radio versus watching on TV, you come away with different results.
Exactly.
And that's what one of the things a number of people have said, that listening to Nixon and Kennedy, they thought Nixon had won, but people said that they watched it on TV and they believed Kennedy had won. And it was basically on appearance.
And that is something that still exists today.
Oh, very definitely. Look at all the campaigns. Why do you think when we had, during the Republican campaigns, we had Michelle Bachmann, and they put her on an apple stand so she wouldn't be as short as people, because women are normally shorter than men, not always, but in this case she was. So they put her on an apple stand so she would be taller, and it's the way they look. One of the things that I'm always amused about is that everyone wears something very patriotic during debates. They have a flag on because that makes you look more patriotic. And those are things that people tend to take away. Those are cues that we use to resonate with the audience.
And so we're seeing that more and more in society, that as a whole, Americans are responding more to images.
Oh, very definitely.
More so than maybe content,
right,
for better or worse.
Right. I mean, images are really important. How someone looks, the way, people today, candidates are speaking in sound bites. And so they practice their sound bites, and they practice their sound bites looking at a certain way. How do you look at a person? Right. Do you smile at the end of your sound bite? Do you not smile? Yes. Those become really important things. And we have media advisors now for every candidate that all they do is work on the presence of the candidate on TV. And then they analyze it over and over again, because the media advisors will go back and look at these tapes over and over and over again, and they'll say things like, no, you need to be 2 steps in front of somebody because that means that you're more powerful. It shows that you're a leadership. So these images have become very overwhelming, and that's what people are, that's one of the things that we have looked at in television is what is the image of the individual.
Exactly. So in 2004, Howard Dean was the first politician to successfully use the internet for campaigning purposes. What did he know that other politicians maybe hadn't caught on to?
Well, remember in 2004 was the World Wide Web was launched to the general public in 1991. That's when we had use of the World Wide Web. Remember, the internet and the World Wide Web are two very different things. So everyone, all of a sudden, and it wasn't until 1995 where we sort of reached this like acceptance rate of the World Wide Web. So in 2004, basically, we were only into the World Wide Web for about 9 years. And what Dean did is and his campaign people, his campaign manager was a guy named Joe Trippi, who was just really savvy on the World Wide Web. And what he did is Dean and Trippi were regarded as pioneers in raising the profile of the World Wide Web-based fundraising and grassroots organizing. What they did is they used the World Wide Web to fundraise and to go back into grassroots things. And in the fall of 2003, Dean had outpaced all of his Democratic rivals in fundraising. And it was mainly due because he went to this website called meetup.com. And meetup.com was a website based in New York, and it was a website that you could meet up with people. Right. And every little group of people would have their meetups. And so the number one, this is always amusing, the number one group of people on meetup.com were witches. And there were 13,000 witches,
really?
Yes, on meetup.com. So Joe Trippi, who was very competitive and still is very competitive, said, I won't let the witches beat me. So they had 15,000 members, and Howard Dean only had 3,000. So Trippi went after it. He got everybody to sign up to meetup.com, and all of a sudden he beat the witches, and it just came this huge thing that happened that he really wanted to do. Right. But the interesting thing is, by the third quarter of 2003, Howard Dean had raised $15 million via the World Wide Web. That was a huge amount of money. Nobody had ever raised that kind of money by the World Wide Web. And most of these contributions were small contributions. The truth of the matter is, as we look at how much money candidates raise on the web, it is not $100 contributions. It's not $1,000 contributions. It's basically $25 contribution. Right. Obama's average contribution in 2008 was $80. That was the average contribution. So what we're finding is that people are empowered again. You don't have to be a multimillionaire. You don't have to have thousands of dollars. But the internet provided this way of donating to a candidate of your choice. Even if you only had $5 or $10 or $15, people felt engaged. They felt like they had a way to go about it. So basically what Dean and Trippi did is that they actually, through meetup.com, raised all of this money.
And so kind of what that did, it supported the 50-state campaign strategy, right? Where instead of selecting certain states to focus on and kind of pushing aside ones, oh, I'll lose those, let's focus on everyone. Right. So would they have been able to do that without the internet? No, because the internet is for everybody, and it's not only 50 states. Remember, the World Wide Web is worldwide. That's why it's called the World Wide Web. Exactly. So people, we are influenced by now lots of people. We're not just getting influenced by people here in the United States, but on social media, you can also be influenced by people in Africa, by people in the Middle East, because you have people there who are actually, all of us have friends all over the world, and they're telling us what the sentiments are in other countries, and so we see that. So, in essence, the social media kind of allows us to have international influence, and maybe it, gives us first-person perceptions of what people in other countries think of our presidential candidates. And is that new?
Actually, that is since 2004, but every year increases and increases. Right. And Facebook probably has, blown it out of the water. I never had any friends on MySpace who were from international. All my friends on MySpace MySpace was a very young social media. Yeah. Now what you have is Facebook, and everybody's on Facebook. My 88-year-old mother is on Facebook. People love Facebook. Yes. And there are other social media outlets there. Twitter is a really important thing. LinkedIn, we haven't talked very much about LinkedIn, but LinkedIn is something that you can actually very well identify very key people. Yes. You can actually identify all the people who went to CSUN through LinkedIn, and you can actually do mailings directly to them.
And LinkedIn, that's a professional social network of sorts, right?
It's a very professional network, but the amount of information you can get from those people, and you can actually then, you can invite all of them to become, part of your network. So your network can become the entire CSUN, everybody on LinkedIn who's from CSUN. So if you're running for office and you wanted to like make a big thing about, I want to have CSUN people behind me, that's a good way to do it.
Exactly. Well, and speaking of Facebook and all of these social networking sites, in a recent article from The Guardian, digital analysts are predicting that this is going to be the first election where Facebook is going to be playing a major role. So we're just kind of wondering, do you agree with that, and do you think absolutely that's true?
This is phenomenal what's happening. The Pew Internet and Family Life Organization released a study this past year, and this is really interesting. In 2010, 73% of people over the age of 18 went online to get information about the 2010 midterm election. So first of all, what you have is all these people going online just to get information. And you can find it everywhere. I mean, people are watching videos all over the place about their candidates, and they can actually go and see streaming media. So, quite coincidentally, on March 6th was Super Tuesday, and on Super Tuesday is the day that there are all these primaries. And President Obama actually had a live stream press conference on March 6th, the same day as the primary, not coincidental.
Right.
Well, basically, you could watch everything that was going on your computer, and you can rewatch it and rewatch it and rewatch it. And people are posting continuously on Facebook. They're twittering things.
Yeah.
And what you can go and you can look at both sides of the issue.
Exactly.
And you no longer have to, researching your candidate has become much easier because you don't have to go to the library. You don't have to go get newspapers. All you have to do is have some sort of digital device. You can have a phone that gets you online, and you can actually start researching things. So yes, the internet is going to play a very major role in this election.
Traditional light bulbs actually generate 9 times more heat than light. Switch to Energy Star light bulbs, and you'll realize just how much cash you are really burning through. Saving energy saves you money. Learn more at energysavers.gov.
Have you ever considered, I don't know, getting it waxed?
Waxed?
Yeah.
Bro, that's a little weird.
I don't know. Doesn't seem that weird to me.
Just keep shaving my back, okay? Oh, dude, can I get a bite?
What? With my spoon? It's disgusting.
With Super Tuesday, we have the Republican candidates competing over 10 states. So is that something where social media could make or break them? Does that have to do with electability, or is it?
That's one of the reasons why there's no leading candidate in the Republican Party right now.
Yes.
Because you have all of these people who are undecided.
Right.
And you're undecided because you're waiting to the last moment to see what's going to be right or wrong or which way you're going to go. But people, the most powerful thing in campaigning is, what do your family and friends say?
Yeah.
That you are influenced by your family and your friends. And so on Facebook, people are posting continuously. And a lot of the undecided voters are basically deciding based upon what their family and friends are saying on Facebook. There was a study done several years ago about how young women vote at their first election. And they vote the way their father votes.
I remember being like that.
Yeah, it's really interesting.
Yeah.
But that's your first vote, and then and then you start learning much more. But that shows that you tend to vote like family.
Right.
As you get older and you learn more and you have more life experiences, and as you move around the country, then you start voting differently. But that very first vote is based upon what your family did.
Exactly. So with social media now, people are getting their information through Facebook and through Twitter, and there is still that influence, but is there kind of a controlled information that they're getting, or is it up to the person, the user of social media, to figure out their information?
Well, that's an interesting question. That's a real interesting question,
Yeah.
because, you know, is it controlled? Yes, it's controlled, because who do you have as your friends? And how many people have the time to go out and really spend that much time looking at all the issues? You find a really good campaign, you find a good video, and you put it on Facebook.
Right.
And then all your friends can put it on Facebook. But, you know, usually it's something that you're going to put on that you either support or you want to ridicule.
Yes.
You want to ridicule it. So that's what happens. You know, we're talking about Super Tuesday and why there is no one front, you know, running place. Every one of these campaigns have had to figure out their own little toolbox that they wanted to use. And in Iowa, Michelle Bachmann used a Get Out the Vote for all precinct captains. So she gave them a toolbox online that they could use. And Newt Gingrich, in one of the primaries, actually did this whole thing where he started a phone chain through Facebook, where like everybody was supposed to make X number of calls, and he did this by encouraging people to do it through Facebook, and so that's how we're doing it. You know, it's easier to put something on Facebook and say call 5 friends than to call one friend, leave a message, because more people see that thing.
Yeah.
Call 5 friends.
Exactly, and that's kind of an interesting thing I noticed just in doing research for this. I noticed that Newt Gingrich, of the Republican candidates, Newt Gingrich has the most Twitter followers. I think upwards of 1 million. I mean, he has 1 million plus. Where Mitt Romney, for example, I think has under 200,000. But in general, and through the phone surveys, they're saying Mitt Romney is more popular. So it's kind of interesting to me how there's this dichotomy. I mean, Newt Gingrich, I think, has a very strong social media presence, but what's maybe not working for him? Or is that showing that social media doesn't work, do you think?
I can't speculate on what's not working for Newt Gingrich. It's an interesting thing, because the one thing you have to remember about Newt Gingrich is he was majority leader.
Right.
And if you look at the people who served in Congress when he was majority leader, many of them have come out and said that they do not support him. He didn't make a lot of friends when he was majority leader, and that, I think, that is probably the biggest thing, because people do have long memories. And when you have people that you respect, and especially your own congressman who say, as a Republican, I cannot support Newt Gingrich. Bob Dole, who was the vice presidential candidate at one point, came out and said he wouldn't support Newt Gingrich. That's a major statement.
Yes.
So Newt Gingrich has his own demons to conquer, his own past that he has to, to look. And part of that is, again, it's the internet. We can easily look this up.
Right.
For people who are just turning 18, they don't remember when Newt Gingrich was Speaker of the House, and so what they can do is they can go and look it up.
Right.
They can go to Wikipedia and get the quick download.
Yes, the little short summary of it.
And sometimes it may not always be right, but we say start at Wikipedia, because it gives you a start and you can start sourcing from there.
Yeah. Well, and that's always the interesting thing about Wikipedia and the internet and doing your political research. You kind of get lost in a series of 100 clicks.
Right.
And it's a huge paper trail, well, digital trail, and it's kind of never ending. So it is interesting. And that kind of makes me think about, now we have politicians with their personal Facebook pages. And, my kind of question about that is, does that kind of factor into their credibility?
Oh, yeah, because this is always something that I'm always somewhat amused by, is that people think that individuals create their own pages. It's like they have staffs of people who do this.
Exactly.
I mean, if you think, like Newt Gingrich is twittering all along the way, he has people twittering for him.
Exactly.
But the thing is, they can reach a very select group of people. They can say, okay, we want to target the 35 to 49-year-old group here. So they have people who are 35 to 49 twittering with the Newt Gingrich handle, because they are targeting that.
Yeah.
And this is a brand new job. I mean, if you look at this, in 2004, this job did not exist in campaigns. Now we have digital specialists in campaigns, and you actually have people who train campaign workers how to become a digital expert. And if you go online, you can just Google a verb now.
Exactly.
You can just Google, digital campaigns, and you can find all these people who are teaching people how to become a digital campain strategist. That's not stupid. Strategist. And these are brand new jobs.
Yeah.
So when people talk about, the internet has taken away jobs, basically it's created tons and tons of new jobs for people that we never thought about, 15 years ago.
Exactly. And then let's just talk about, kind of recently we've seen with Rush Limbaugh. There was a big Twitter-driven backlash against him, and we're kind of seeing that social media can mobilize people a little more and unify. And do you think that's true? Are we going to start seeing that more in the future?
Much more. Much more. People can't get away with racial slurs, sexual slurs, anything. I mean, people have to really watch what they're saying.
Yeah.
You cannot offend people. I found this extremely offensive. I found it, that anybody who has that large of an audience would call someone a prostitute and a slut. That is just improper. Those are improper terms to use. And then to say, if we're going to pay for her health insurance, she should post her sex tapes online. I mean, that is just beyond. I mean, that's crossing lines.
Right.
And as of at this broadcast, there were nine major advertisers who had pulled their ads from his show. Now, is that going to be long-lived or not? We don't know. That will be the proof of the pudding, how long these advertisers will withhold their ads. In the meantime, a couple of PACs, political action committees, have actually increased their advertising on the show. So we're seeing things, but that's another thing that will go down in history. People won't forget that. We can go back to the 2004 campaign with Dean and the Willie Horton commercial, which basically was his downfall. And this is something the Bush campaign paid for in advertising and said that Dean was soft on crime, and the Willie Horton ad was one of the things that really made the big effort on it, the big statement.
Right.
And this isn't, and we don't forget these things anymore. We remember these things, and they're always present. We can just go to the Facebook, or just go to the internet and find the material.
Yeah, exactly.
John Kerry probably got defeated because of the Swift boat commercials. So again, but it's not just on TV. You don't have to watch TV. We have not only time shifted everything we do, we have place shifted everything we do.
Exactly.
We are moving everything to the internet.
Wonderful. So now we've kind of seen that social media can play a role not only in our presidential elections, but it affects our public figures and our media heads. What do you think is the future? What can we look forward to?
The one thing we know is that the 2012 election will be decided by Hispanic voters, undecided voters, and the internet. Yeah. Because the Hispanics have mobilized, and they have mobilized big time, because they have been the disenfranchised group for a long time, and especially what's gone on in Arizona. So in Arizona, you look at the campaigns there, midterms, you're seeing a lot more Hispanic, mobilization. Right. They've mobilized from the old-fashioned way, from grassroots, moving right into the internet. So we're taking everything that we knew that worked in the past and adding the internet to it, and that's what's happening.
It's wonderful. Thank you so much for joining us, Mary. It was great.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
We'd like to thank you for watching On Point.
You can follow us on Facebook by searching CSUN On Point.
And on Twitter at CSUN On Point, all one word.
The show appears on our website at csuntvnews.com.
And we air on the Los Angeles-owned Channel 36, Sundays at 4 o'clock.
Next week, we will be discussing how people are affected by stress and the ways to manage it.
I'm Angelika Sjostrom.
And I'm Dianne Escalona. Thank you for watching On Point.
Slave times when
confidence of the American people.
The habit. District attorney wanted to get rid of